And I can very easily see a future where, like, babes are out here busy complaining of the Bumble AI subscription or the Bumble Plus subscription because it's such a constant cost that they don't really like all that much. And yes, it's introducing them to guys, but they don't like the whole talking stage, so they have to pay for the AI to like talk to the guys for them. And I'm assuming that
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who likes his women the same exact way he likes his yogurt. He is also a man who may find it hard to breathe if you've got that asthma. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B, and I am here to talk about dating. Not in the way that some of y'all might think, but it's more related towards time, actually. I would probably say the main central theme for this episode, besides dating, is actually time, because I've got a bunch of past and I've got a couple of present, but I've also got a little bit of the future, which I do want to discuss in relation to dating. And each of those sides has its own tidbits that I believe people probably ignore or probably don't notice or don't even know, which I feel would be very, very interesting to kind of just go a little bit deep on and kind of look at the possibilities or what used to happen or what's currently happening, so that I can put some perspective on how dating is for a lot of people, or how dating is and a lot of people probably don't know about it. So if you'd like to know how it all goes down, and you would probably like to find out how the past and the present is really fucking up the dating market for people, then you should probably listen all the way till the end. And should you like the episode, should you not like it, should you have a different form of feedback, or should you want to suggest a potential episode, then the social media links are usually in the description below. They rarely ever change, and I would be more than happy to attend to what it is that you send me in the DMs, accordingly, as I like to say it. Now, with all that said, I do have a couple of things that I need to get into. Okay, just two before I get to the main topic, of which the first one is something that maybe some people might notice, but others probably won't. But if you're one of those people that listens to the episode when it comes out on the day of, then you might have probably noticed that the previous episode did not come out on Friday as expected. Like, usually I stick to a schedule where I post episodes on Tuesday and Friday, and it's even in the bio whenever you read it. New episodes every Tuesday and Friday at around about 9 a.m. Some days there might be delays, but essentially it's around about 9 a.m. So what happened last Friday that I didn't post up? Well, nothing too major really. I just got caught up with a couple of things, and I was pretty far from the laptop, so I couldn't post up the episode. And if any of you has been listening for a particularly long period of time, or at least within the last year, then you probably know that my whole taking a break from podcasting came after I had not been around for a while, and I'd left my laptop at home and I was busy stressing about posting up an episode. So that was something that I sought to get away from, and this was another one of those instances where I was like, you know what, I'm human, and I may not be close to my laptop, but I don't think I need to be tied down to ensuring that those episodes always come out like clockwork. So I decided to, just take some time away from the laptop, and I've been particularly okay with that. Like, it didn't really hurt, it didn't suck, and I had even more fun. But with that said, if you're someone that's wondering why you didn't notice what it is that I'm talking about, it's probably because episode 618 is up. And for those of y'all that probably might not have noticed, I posted up 2 episodes on the day this episode came out, just so that I can post up Friday's episode, which was supposed to have been out on Friday, but also give you the episode that was supposed to have come out the Tuesday that this episode comes out. So I basically bundled them both together. I figured, you know what, I will give you guys a double dose. And if you're a fan of the content, then you basically have 2 bits of content for the one day. So hopefully you'll enjoy it, and you'll probably listen to both the episodes and you'll actually like them. And with that said, I am going to leave it at that, because that was just a bit of housekeeping. Now, I do want to get into the main topic, although before I can get to that, I do want to talk about the future of dating and AI. Now, I know if you're someone that's been in the tech space, the AI thing has become so much of a buzzword. And even though you're not in the tech space, everyone nowadays just talking about AI this, AI that. Oh, we can use AI to do A, B, C, or D. And it can be a little bit tiring, especially considering that it does seem like it is quite the bubble. But even with that said, there is some bits to it that actually do carry some sense. But now, when it comes to the world of dating, you wouldn't expect AI to actually be a thing. Like none at all, except that it actually might be. At least that's according to the Bumble founder and executive chair, Whitney Wolfe, who claimed, and I quote, "The future of dating is having your AI date other people's AI and recommending the best matches for you to meet." Which kind of left me in a bit of a pickle, because on one end I was like, this just sounds like some shit from a Black Mirror episode. But then, once I listened to what she actually said, it did kind of make sense. But I'll just read what was said in the article before I can get what she actually said, because I have a clip of it. So the article says, and I quote, "Bumble founder and executive chair Whitney Wolfe Herd believes AI could reshape how people date. She describes a future where an AI dating concierge helps you work through insecurities, guides you on how to show up better in relationships, and even gives tips for clearer communication. Beyond that, she imagines your AI could date other AIs on your behalf, scanning thousands of profiles to narrow them down to just a few strong matches. The idea is to reduce the stress of modern dating and shift the focus towards healthier, more meaningful connections." End quote. Which, it doesn't sound like a bad idea. It's just, I don't know if AI would be that great to date. Like, even just the whole talking stage thing that people talk about nowadays. Like, I don't know if AI could really make it. But instead of me talking too much about it, let me see what she has to say and see what kind of context she's giving to this entire thing and see whether it can actually work. So, let me just play the clip. So, without further ado,
our focus with AI is to help create more healthy and equitable relationships. And that also starts with yourself. How can we actually teach you how to date? How can we help you show up in a better way?
Give me an example.
Okay, so for example, you could in the near future be talking to your AI dating concierge, and you could share your insecurities. I just came out of a breakup. I have commitment issues. And it could help you train yourself into a better way of thinking about yourself. And then it could give you productive tips for communicating with other people. If you want to get really out there, there is a world where your dating concierge could go and date for you with other dating concierge. No, truly. And then you don't have to talk to 600 people. It will just scan all of San Francisco for you and say, these are the 3 people you really ought to meet.
Okay. Particularly interesting take. And, even though you'd want to argue against it, this is a founder of a tech company. So her talking about AI, adding to the experience that the company provides, I think does kind of make sense. And even though I went into listening to this entire thing very skeptical at first, at some point when I listened properly, like, she was actually making some very solid points. The idea of utilizing AI in the dating space is actually something that is very possible. Now, don't get me wrong, I still believe it sounds like a Black Mirror episode, because this shit sounds dystopian as fuck. Like, dating, the act of meeting people and possibly trying to forge, lifelong connections with someone that you'd want to be intimate with as a partner. Like, that being outsourced to AI just seems wild as shit. Except that I feel like there's so many women that would probably sign up for such. And the reason I say this is because babes have a thing of, wanting to not have to deal with some of the issues that they might find cumbersome. They like that convenience. And the reason I'm talking about women, not even men, is because Bumble was essentially mostly made for women. It's essentially supposed to give women the power to decide, who it is that they want to talk to and blah, blah, blah. And I can very easily see a future where, like, babes are out here busy complaining of the Bumble AI subscription or the Bumble Plus subscription because it's such a constant cost that they don't really like all that much. And yes, it's introducing them to guys, but, they don't like the whole talking stage, so they have to pay for the AI to talk to the guys for them. And I'm assuming there's a shit ton of guys that, because we kind of pride our quote-unquote manlyhood, or society prides, manlyhood on getting the job done and doing the work, I don't think most guys will pay for it. Okay, definitely some will because they don't know how to talk to women, but for the most part, society and also other men will kind of frown upon the idea of men using AI tools to talk to women because of this whole thing of, a man has to do the work. It's kind of the reason why, the whole idea of masturbation amongst men and using, toys to pleasure yourself is considered a bad thing for men because you should be going out there and talking to women and putting the work to try and woo a woman to sleep with you, not necessarily finding the easiest way out of trying to get a nut. So it is kind of something that most guys might probably look to and avoid, but I foresee women looking at the dating market and saying that it's shit and they want to meet guys but they don't want the hassle, and they'll just end up paying for it. Like, that's literally what I foresee happening for most of the women out here. But do I think that it's a good idea? I honestly don't think so. Mainly because, one, AI is still, developing, and I don't think it's at the level where it's that good whenever it comes to assisting human beings in being human beings as they probably would be. But even more so than that, the whole thing of the AI model or the AI tool training you on handling past traumas and being a good partner in a relationship or to prepare you for the relationship, whatever the hell she was saying, it sounds like it's just going to be made into a model that women would think works best, and then that shit wouldn't work very well for women, and then they'd come back and they'd say that the problem is the AI model. Yet for the most part, dating is such an in-person experience. It's such an individual experience that saying that you can outsource, most of the work of looking for a good potential partner to an AI tool, and it'll do the job of not only looking for the partner for you, but helping make your transition to being in a good relationship a good thing, is, in my opinion, quite a pipe dream. Just mostly because it's not ready yet, and it's such an individual experience. But then again, I do tend to think, or at least I hope, that it's still a bit of a while before dating apps get AI integration. But you know what? Let's give it time. Let's see what happens. We'll see if I'm wrong or if, I'm basically just talking out of my ass in this entire thing. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I will move on to our main topic of this episode, which revolves around the idea of just men, modern men as well as traditional men, and, the dating space, and some of the statements that were made by someone who is a podcaster and influencer by the name of Lydia KM, and how I feel like a lot of what she said, while it did seem right to a lot of women, underlined a particularly big issue in dating right now that might be affecting people and they don't even know it. And that is the idea of the traditional man and what a man is supposed to do. All of this isn't anything particularly philosophical. This actually just came from a couple of questions that she was asked when she was out and about, and it was filmed on camera and it was posted up on IG. So I am going to let the clip play because I do have the clip with me, and then I can get into my thoughts on it, because I do feel like there's some things that she probably might not get the full idea of, and other things that I feel like are a little bit delulu, or just very, very delulu. But, before I can say anything more, let me just let the clip play, okay? So, without further ado...
What's something our modern men have normalized that doesn't sit right with you?
I think there's this resistance from, I guess, some men that I'm seeing, the role of provider is who do women think they are to be provided for? And traditional men don't think like that. Usually traditional men believe that, you take care of your own, whatever. But I think modern men are getting a bit more comfortable in, they also want to be taken care of, and there's nothing wrong with that. But now we're going on the other side, as if who are you to be taken care of? They're not valuing women as much.
Do you prefer traditional guys or modern guys?
Yes. I think modern, however, it's modern in some elements. So I think modern in the sense of, you do think women are people. Let's start there. Crazy work, but women are people. You're working on yourself, things like that. Modern from that perspective, but traditional from the point of understanding, how to take care of a girl.
Do you think 50-50 can work on you?
No.
So why is it hard for 50-50 to work on you?
because it's never really 50-50. And when you think about it from the context of like, we get married, we have children, the amount of mental labor, physical labor that is on a woman when they're bringing a child into this world, then on top of that, financially, I'm bringing 50-50. You've got to be kidding me, young man. Absolutely no. Yeah.
Do you think modern dating is sad?
I mean, there's elements of it that's really sad. I think we compare so much. Everyone thinks that they have so many options. People just think it's like we're not working on ourselves enough, and we want everyone at the same time. People don't want to just stick with one person.
Where?
Okay. Particularly interesting points, and I'm not gonna lie, those were some very interesting questions. And honestly, like out of everything that she said, I'd probably say that I fully agree with the last answer, and that's like the only thing that I fully agree with her on. Like the whole bit of like, do you think modern dating is sad, and the entire thing that she gave, that one I totally agree with. Do I think it is sad? I think there's a lot that is messed up, but there's definitely room for improvement. But do I think that it's sad? Yes, to some degree. It is particularly sad. But all that said, I do have some thoughts on everything that she said, just mostly because I don't entirely agree with what was being said. Not just as far as the answer that she gave, but the entire ideology on some of the stuff that she was talking about. So let me address the questions, but I am going to start from the last going all the way to the first, because I feel like the last one carries a lot less weight for me as opposed to the first two. So the last question that she was asked was, do you think that modern dating is sad? Of which she said yes, and she spoke on the comparison that people are having nowadays and how it's affecting people, and also the fact that people don't want to stick to one person. They want to be with like everyone. They want to have everyone, which at least she didn't center it on one gender or the other. And I agree. There's a lot of people out here that are trying to be with too many people all at the same time. And it's like you're finding instances where women are dating 2-3 guys at the same time. Like not dating in that like they're just meeting people here and there. It's like they're having almost full-blown relationships. Guys are doing the same. People are cheating on each other. Like that shit is very, very annoying for someone that is trying to have something long-term with one individual partner. So it does make the entire dating experience particularly annoying and sad. Also the fact that there's a lot of taken guys that are making up the dating market. And while I could talk about how they're fucking it up for us single dudes, a lot of the single babes are going for the taken dudes. And I'm like, you guys are complaining about taken dudes being in the market, but y'all are also going for the taken dudes. But I won't really center on that as much. But I don't want to talk too much about it because that would end up having me deviate to other issues. But for the most part, actually, for the entirety of what she said, I totally agree with her. Like the comparison and the, trying to be with everyone, that was something that I can probably say makes the dating market really suck for most people nowadays. And the fact that it seems like such a rampant thing. Granted, it's not necessarily true, but people just talk about it a lot more, so it seems like there's way more of that than ever before. But anyways, that said and done, the other question that she was asked was, do you think 50-50 can work on you? Or you can work with 50-50, essentially is what I believe. And she said a straight up no. And while I was okay with some level of the justification, because the first part that she mentioned actually did make sense and I agree, and that's the part where she said that it's never always 50-50. Like it's never 50-50 really. And I totally agree. Even when people talk about going Dutch, it's not necessarily about going a full flat 50-50. There's always going to be some level of, compromise on one side or the other. So like, for example, if you were to go out on a date with someone and let's say, you don't consume as much or you consume way more than the other person does and the other person consumes very little as far as costs go, and then you're like, let's, make sure we cut it through the middle 50-50, you're essentially making the other person pay more. And that just doesn't really live by the whole 50-50 code per se. Even in my understanding of going Dutch, it's not about getting 50-50 exact. It's about handling your bit and the other person handles their bit. And that's how I would probably look at it, and I don't have a problem with that really. A bunch of people might, there's some dudes that want to stamp their traditionalness, quote unquote, and talk about how they are providers and the woman must never pay a bill when I'm there, blah blah. And that's okay. If that's a you thing, that's a you thing. I don't mind either or. But the justification for her justification that went after the whole talk of the I can't do 50-50 because it's not like a real 50-50 was the one that I was having a problem with, because she used the example of, you get married and you have a couple of children, and bringing a child into this world takes such a massive toll on a woman physically and mentally. And, she was basically basing that as the reason why, you shouldn't do 50-50, which kind of didn't sit very well with me because, okay, don't get me wrong, this is a talking point that women nowadays mostly use whenever they're busy talking about how a man has to be a provider. It's been a talking point that's been used online a shit ton of times, all right? But here's how I look at it. You are essentially talking about bringing a kid into this world, which is going to take you about 9 months. Then add a couple other months while you're busy trying to learn the kid and trying to understand what's going on and basically just trying to come to terms with being a new mom. And yes, all of those things will have a toll on you physically and mentally. But when I look at it, if you guys are going to be together long term, assuming that you guys do like maybe 50-60 years together, how the hell does 50-60 years discount for what? Maybe about a year and a half worth of, struggle and like potential torture, if some people might call it that, because that shit don't make sense. And that's like 1.5 years per kid. You look at someone that's having 6 kids, it makes a little bit more sense. But if you look at someone that's having 1 kid or someone that doesn't want to have kids, like, should they also start chipping in? Because the whole provider thing doesn't make as much sense. Because when you look at it, like, you are talking about trading about a year and a half of your life, of which even the first like 2, maybe 3 months of pregnancy, like, babes aren't really going through shit per se. Although I digress, like, you are basically talking about trading a year and a half worth of your life, which I may not be an active participant in, as a justification for not being an active participant in handling financial responsibilities, or at least major financial responsibilities. And you expect that this guy is supposed to want to be with you for decades and decades of his life, probably even beyond half a century. Like, that math doesn't math. Like, if that's the case, then why can't I do it for like maybe say 5 years, and then I take a back seat and I'm like, what, I need like another year or 2 where I'm not really providing, so like pick up on the bills and shit. Like, how does 1.5 years give you reprieve for the rest of your fucking life? Like, that shit don't particularly make sense to me. Like, my issue isn't with provision, don't get me wrong. I don't have a problem with being the provider as a man. My problem is with the argument. The argument itself, in my opinion, is absolute shit. And yes, I know, I've never been a woman, I can't produce a kid, but you can't tell me that a year and a half worth of torture per child, if you have 1, multiple, or none, that's entirely up to you, is supposed to justify a man picking up the burden of financial responsibility. Like, that shit just does not make sense to me, from a mathematical perspective at least. But anyways, with that said and done, the other question that she had been asked was, do you prefer a traditional man or a modern man? And she basically went into making it seem as though it was a mix of both. Although, in as much as you weren't watching the video, she seemed like she was angling towards the traditional man, which essentially just spoke to the fact that she wanted to be treated a certain way by a dude. And look, while I don't mind the idea, or at least the fantasy, of the traditional man, can I just pop the bubble of this idea of the traditional man and remind y'all that the reality of a traditional man is not what most of y'all think? Like, fine, yes, there are some exceptions, and there are some genuinely great romantic dudes that have been in our world, for a time being, and, like before and even current. But the idea of the traditional man is more fantasy than reality for most. Like, if you think I'm lying, by the way, go and check with a bunch of your moms and much older women who've had like kids that are fully grown. Like, they'll tell you the idea of the so-called traditional man, minus maybe sorting bills for a good chunk of them, of which even then, it may not have been constant for all of them, isn't really a reality. Like, the so-called traditional man that's romantic and handles the bills and always takes care of his woman, like, that shit was not a representation of what was there back then. And if anything, the modern man today is way more romantic than the traditional man was, if you look at it as far as generalities and timing goes. Like, most guys out here, like, the moment they really like a babe, like, they'll be doing romantic shit all the live long day. Like, whether that's simping, whether that's, being in your feelings, whether that's someone that you want to settle down with, like, there's a ton of guys that are very, very romantic. But you look at a lot of men back in the day, like, those guys weren't romantic. Like, whatever romance you were probably being told about is probably a stack of bull that was mostly pushed by Hollywood and, like, books and, the fairy tale stories that people are getting. But the reality of it is that most men from back in the day weren't all that romantic. And if you think I'm lying, go and check with a lot of the older women who dated and have married or were married from back then, and they will tell you that there were some romantic dudes, maybe a few, but most weren't. So if anything, the modern man is probably way more romantic than the traditional man was. And to kind of cap things off with the question that started all of this, which was, what do you think has been normalized but shouldn't? And this woman went into the idea of men today not wanting to be providers because, like, why should they provide for a woman? And here's the thing, alright? While I'm not against the idea of being a provider, and I don't think most guys have an issue with that, I do find it a little bit annoying the way this thing has been pushed so hard. Like, I can remember how a couple of years back I used to talk about the buzzwords for the year. I feel like the buzzword for this year, more so towards women in the relationship talks, is usually the fact that they want a man who's a provider. Like, this whole thing of they don't want to deal with bills and they want to offload that shit to a dude has become such a normalized thing, and it's something that's pushed so hard where it's like, oh, we want men who are providers, but men nowadays aren't providers. And the truth of it is, for most guys, if they were in an economically advantageous position, they would not mind providing. Like, most guys have been sensitized and basically conditioned to view themselves as a potential provider to a family and to a partner. So it's not something that they're against. But when you take things like economic uncertainty and you mix it in with, the low appreciation and the high levels of entitlement that a lot of women today have, as well as a bunch of other issues, you realize that it just becomes harder for men to be comfortable with being sole providers. Like, there's a ton of women out here that are making the same, if not more than a lot of the men that they are probably meeting, and they're still expecting them to be providers. And when you kind of look at it, like, it's not like these babes are going to help chip in with the bills per se. So for the most part, the weight of that burden is going to be on the man. And regardless of gender, if two people decided to come together and live together and both of them were earning the same, if one person was to shoulder most of the costs, anyone would consider that to be unfair. But the moment you slap the man tag on the one that's shouldering most of the costs and the woman tag on the one who isn't shouldering most of the costs, and suddenly it seems like it's such a normal thing for women, and it should be the reality for most women, yet they want to make the same. And they'll always use the justification of the traditional man, used to handle all of these bills, blah, blah, blah. But the traditional man was with a woman who wasn't making as much as them. Most of these traditional men were making, sometimes 2, maybe even 3 times more than their partners. So provision was essentially going to be a no-brainer. But now a bunch of feminism has happened. Women are making the same, sometimes even more than men, and they still want men to shoulder the burden of handling costs. And then, they'll come back home, after the guy sorted out all the bills, he barely has enough for himself, and they're busy complaining about spending 10K on skincare products. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I feel like that might seem a little bit inconsiderate from my end. But, I guess maybe I'm not a provider, man. Maybe I'm not, because this whole fantasy of the traditional man and being the provider is, let's be honest, a fantasy that's been constructed by a lot of women today, which is not representative of most people's reality, especially people in relationships. And men are being forced to live that reality, and if they're unable to live up to that, they're being disrespected and being treated like shit because apparently they're not providers. And I'm not a very big fan of that, which is why I just figured, you know what, I might as well remind you what the hell a traditional man used to be. Not the fantasy that you guys have, what a traditional man actually used to be. And to kind of conclude all of this, what I'm gonna say is, ladies, this delulu of a traditional man needs to stop. You're comparing modern men to a fantasy that did not exist for 90% of women, hell, maybe even 95 or 98% of women. And in doing that, you're comparing modern men to a fantasy that's not representative of past reality. And it's going to hurt both sides, as it's currently been doing, and it'll probably continue doing. So maybe if you look at that a little bit and, you know, make some tweaks and allow for some level of compromise, maybe, just maybe, you might actually have a much better chance at bagging dudes in the dating market. Although, then again, at the same time, I could be wrong, and, you know, maybe, you know, I have problems with being a provider. Maybe I'm not that kind of guy that's supposed to be a traditional man. Either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the breaktime podcast. On X, it is at Bagaka the D. And on Bluesky, it is at the breaktimepod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end of this fairly long episode. And I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.